dictionary definition of music is the art of arranging sounds in time through the elements of melody, harmony, rhythm, and timbre. Low Pass Filter is a show about the nature of this thing we call music, how it functions in people's lives, how it's contextualized by society, and why we find certain music meaningful. This is Low Pass Filter. Hello and welcome to Low Pass Filter. This is a show where we talk about music and what it means in our lives. My name is Mateo Noche, and as always I'm here with Bandon Wayne.
Hello, good morning.
Hey Bandon. We are ensconced in the luxurious KZZH 96.7 studio here this morning.
Yeah, this is cool. We got a different vibe going on this time.
Yeah, we're kind of in the fishbowl, if you will.
Yeah.
But I don't know, just changing it up a little bit, I guess.
Dig it.
You know?
Keep it fresh.
That's right. Yeah. So we go back and forth every month. 1 month Bandon picks a topic, the next one I pick the topic, and it just so happens that this month it is my pick for the topic, and I picked our 10 most favorite obscure albums.
Yeah.
Not necessarily songs, but the whole album.
Yeah. Albums that we love that would, for the most part, be seen as something pretty obscure.
Yeah.
Something for a more niche audience.
Right, and I think that was the idea, and I sort of failed miserably because I ended up with mainstream people with albums that were obscure.
Okay, yeah.
Or I think what I really ended up with is albums that became obscure, or eclipsed by other things they did.
Yeah. Well, I think you kind of outlined that when you brought the topic to me. I probably went more in the direction of just artists that are obscure in general,
right?
Or singular records that kind of exist on their own in a world of obscurity, I guess.
Sure. Yeah.
But then I was thinking, obscure is only obscure to someone who's not familiar with it.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's kind of a squirrely topic to begin with. My apologies. But
hey, all we're doing is exploring.
Yeah. Well, I'll jump off with the first two, and then we'll check in the time here to see when we started. And then we'll just go back and forth with a duo, I think.
Sure.
So the first album I started with is something called One Live Badger.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, a lot of people have not. But they were a British band from the early 70s, and they included Tony Kaye, who was the Yes keyboard player.
Okay.
Until he and Trevor Rabin, I think was it Trevor Rabin? It was another Trevor, but somebody they kind of ejected a couple people from the band, and he was one of the people that got kicked out.
Yeah.
Although I think he still remained friendly with them. And he formed this band with a guy named David Foster, who is a singer, guitar player, and producer. But this was I don't know, it's just really, I don't know if a boogie band is kind of an insulting term, but it's kind of a boogie band at a higher level, Interesting lyrics, long extended jams, some really just stellar guitar playing. You could see why Tony Kaye was in Yes.
Of getting away from the prog, more blues rock based.
Yeah. And they only made 2 records.
Okay.
This was one of them. They made a studio album and this record, and
wow.
they sank really fast. But this record also has the distinction of being the first album cover art done by Roger Dean.
Really? Okay.
Even before Yes.
Yeah. Interesting.
He was the very first thing he sold, and then went on to do a long collaboration with Yes and
Yeah.
I think Rush and maybe some other bands. He did album covers.
A bunch, yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to remember all of them.
Yeah.
And realizing I'm thinking about those first couple Yes albums just have photographs, images of the band.
Right.
Don't have the conceptual art yet.
Yeah, well, that brings me neatly to my second choice, which is the band Yes and their album "A Time and a Word."
Uh-huh.
So I'm not a stranger, I think, to Yes fans, but I think to the rest of the world, this was an album that came and went and kind of was foundational. And but this was the record where they ended up ejecting Peter Banks was the guitar player, and Tony Kaye either left or was fired. And in fact, the cover art, which has pictures of the band, includes Steve Howe, who has nothing to do with the record. He was not on the record at all.
Interesting.
But he was brought in after they got rid of Peter Banks. But this is a great record and kind of singular in that it had a huge orchestral component that they didn't really stay with. They created their own sort of orchestra with keyboards and guitars.
And what year did this one come out?
1970.
Okay, so still pretty early days.
Yeah.
Was Bruford still involved?
Bruford was still involved.
Okay.
Yeah. He went on for another couple of years to make a really great record, Close to the Edge and Fragile.
Yeah. So you feel like this record, even amongst Yes fans, might be one of their more obscure albums.
Absolutely.
Listen to.
I mean, when I first noticed Yes, it was it was the record with Fragile, the record with Roundabout. I thought, oh, this is their debut record.
Yeah, right.
And they actually had two before that. But this also record had it had an album cover that showed female breasts, right, in the English release, and so of course that wouldn't do in America.
Yeah.
So that's where you got the picture of the band on the cover of that record. They had to substitute that because of the Puritan Americans couldn't allow a fine art drawing of that involved any nudity whatsoever. But one of my favorite things off this record is a Buffalo Springfield cover called Everydays.
Wow.
Which is got kind of to me, it's like a perfect cross between that orchestral feeling and just rocking out.
Yeah.
It kind of swings back and forth between a very dreamy orchestral sound to just a slam in, Chris Squire sort of led record. It's one of my favorite of all times, really, and fairly unknown. And even the Buffalo Springfield original version, I can't really picture. I don't really remember if it was a single or what record it was on. I've never heard the actual album cut. I've heard a demo version, Stephen Still's demo version, but I've never actually heard the Stephen Still. So anyway, and David Foster from the other band was one of the producers on this.
Okay.
So there's a little incestuous back and forth between them. So.
Well, it's really amazing too. So much was happening so fast in the world of music at that time. Just bands, album a year or less. All these ideas were flowing around, and I think Yes were major stars in the realm of sonic layering and production, and whether they have an orchestra, whether they have just their key players, the depth of sound that they come up with in their compositions, like you said, going from orchestral or ambient passages into just straight hard rock and stuff. And that's a record that's obscure to me too. I don't know that one. I'll have to get on that.
Yeah, Well,
All right.
lay it on me.
Do a couple over here. So hopefully I won't butcher this name. Toshioki Matsumura,
Okay.
Japanese artist who I would have no awareness of if I had not come across this recently issued collection, a little mini compendium of his work from 86 to 93. And you'd really have to listen to it to fully understand it. It's not the most obscure sounding music. It actually has a lot of catchy pop quality to it, but that's kind of married with a more avant-garde approach with synthesizers, and it kind of bridges this Japanese sophisticated pop movement that people refer to as city pop,
Okay.
that was coming along in the 70s into the 80s. So kind of city pop, which is jazzy, sophisticated pop music. And I think
I'll like Tomita.
yeah, although he went more kind of classical and new age in some ways.
Yeah.
Maybe Yellow Magic Orchestra would be. I think they're one of the progenitors of that that movement in music. Anyhow, so it's kind of that meeting the avant-garde of synthesizer music, and I read a blurb, it sounded good, and then I got it, and it just blew me away. So that's one of my favorite recent records.
Well, let's have a look. Why don't we show the cover as long as you got it?
If you'd like me to.
Yes, sure.
Abstract art on the cover, and then more playful abstract art, putting those dots over their faces.
Nice.
I guess Matsumura is the lead creative force here, but I guess he played with other people too. So if you like Yellow Magic Orchestra, if you like Ryuichi Sakamoto, some of the more experimental stuff David Sylvian does, the Boredoms would have been influenced by that stuff, even though they took music in many directions. All right, this one is a hip-hop rap music 90s record that I think is a fairly obscure record, not to everyone. The Boogie Monsters. They are known by some deep heads, especially of that era, kind of where hip hop was going in the 90s, and after the gangster rap stuff, starting getting a little more artsy in a way. And I've loved that record since I discovered it. It came out in 94. I think I probably first heard it in 96 or 97. It's called the Underwater album, or it's Riders of the Storm Underwater album. And it kind of feels like you're underwater a little bit. A little murky. It's got a psychedelic quality to it. Their flow is different. Some of the effects they put on the vocals are subtle, but effectively give these different kind of dynamics rather than just kind of one straight aggressive vocal approach. And so to me, it's always been kind of a bit of an obscure hip-hop record that I would consider classic.
Now, that was sort of smack dab in the middle of the sampling age. Were they doing samples, or was it all...
They actually were kind of a new school at that time that was emerging, where they were returning to creating their own music. Or at least using samples that were so obscure that you couldn't, identify a hook or a beat to a particular artist.
Right.
But I think they had people in there playing keyboards over programmed drum beats and playing bass lines and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you got into stuff like Dilated Peoples, Black Alicious, Del the Funky Homo Sapien, those kinds of artists in the 90s, more kind of new school of
They're more experimental.
post-gangster rap stuff, So check that out.
Nice. All right. Well, I think we can get a couple more in here before the break. And the one I have down here is Ingrid Carklands.
Yeah. Very obscure sounding name.
Yeah. The record is A Darker Passion. And Ingrid is a Latvian American artist, and so she infuses the records with both English and Latvian
Interesting.
records. And it's a very she plays these eclectic instruments like whistles and rattles and rebec. I don't even know what a rebec is. I think it's look it up. But she was the first non-Celtic person on Green Linnet.
Oh, okay.
Green Linnet is, for those of you who don't know, is a Celtic label, or was. I'm not sure if they're still around, but they were big for a while. And she was the first non-Celt, if you will, I guess non-Irish person to be signed to Green Linnet. So it's art pop, very sensual. She's got a great voice, and does some weird sort of Yoko Ono-ish, Kate Bush-ish, sort of yelping in between and stuff. So
interesting. And what year was this one?
I think this was in 1981. I want to say 1981, but it might have been later than that. Now that I think about it, it might have been closer to 1990. I didn't write down the
Interesting.
The year. But I was big on Green Linnet for a while. I bought a bunch of their stuff, and this was one of the things that came up in their catalog, and it was very singular for their output.
Yeah.
So I really liked it.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, check it out. And interestingly, also interesting is she doesn't have a Wikipedia page.
Now that makes you obscure.
Yeah, you're pretty obscure.
Not one person has put her on the
nobody's
internet map.
Nobody has put her on Wikipedia citation needed. But I don't know. Maybe that's good, because maybe she just likes dwelling in obscurity. But
maybe she blocks it.
Could be. She makes them take it down. Okay, then the next thing I have is a band called Ambrosia. And you might know them as kind of a mega soft rock rockers who made a lot of, let's see, they had top 5 hits, How Much I Feel, The Biggest Part of Me, You're the Only Woman, Holding On to Yesterday. But this record is called Somewhere I Never Traveled. And it has none of that in it. There is none
of that, huh?
Very little of it, let's say.
Yeah.
I got this record out, and this is kind of almost the impetus for this show that we're doing. Got it out and played it the other day. The album cover art folds into a pyramid, which is always fun. You can put your fruit in there and keep it fresh. But this record is just an amazing romp. It is. It has a huge and orchestral pieces in it. It has just crazy, synthesizer songs, and then acoustic songs, and it's just really a tour de force of inventiveness. And I don't know what happened to them after. In fact, this record got them signed. They had not been signed to a major label. This record got them signed, I think, to Warner Brothers. And then after that, they made a book on a lot of big hits. But I feel like their creativity took it in the shorts, if you will.
Very interesting. I have about 5 Ambrosia records.
Yeah. Just
looking for those kinds of gems where they kind of step outside that
adult contemporary.
Yeah, the thing they're associated with, soft rock and yacht rock and that kind of thing. Because they're really like very talented musicians.
Oh yeah.
I think the name Ambrosia is probably kind of tongue in cheek,
Sure. David Pack, great keyboardist.
They could play hard rock, prog rock, new wave.
Yeah.
They had all that stuff there. They have a song called Life Beyond LA. Do you know that one?
I don't.
That song just kicks my butt.
Yeah. So this is a little bit of a cheat because this record received a Grammy nomination and didn't win. But it did set the stage for signing to Warner Brothers, and it was produced by Alan Parsons, who was
There you go.
knows his way around a record studio.
Yeah.
Released in 1976. So
he probably came up with the folding pyramid.
I'm
album
sure he
cover
did.
concept.
That's very a Parson-esque
Yeah.
sort of touch. Well, believe it or not, we've made it to our first break. You are listening to or watching Low Pass Filter, and we'll be back in just a moment. Hi, welcome back to Low Pass Filter. I was going to say Mateo Noche there, Bandon Wayne here.
We swapped places
You
today.
figure it out. You know who we are. So, anyway, we're talking obscure. We're talking obscurity. So,
As we're
want to do from
as we
time
are
to time.
moving into obscurity ourselves.
That's
probably.
right. We've been laboring in obscurity for years, so it seemed like a natural step to do
Yeah.
this show.
Well, and this is also a very music nerd type of topic.
Absolutely.
As probably most of our topics are.
They are.
That's why we're doing it, because we care.
Because
about
we get
these-
to nerd out.
Yeah, we care about these kinds of things. But I think people who either are kind of in our same places or are looking to discover new things, I think they're looking for that kind of stuff too. So, yeah,
What's next?
I didn't even necessarily think of this as my all-time top 10 obscure albums.
Okay.
There's so many.
It's hard to pick.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, let me just go through my collection and see what jumps out. So this is one I've been mildly obsessed with for a handful of years now, that I bought just because it looked like this. Like,
Yeah.
what the heck is
I
this?
like that.
Zed.
Okay.
It's Zed with this, whatever that is.
And for those of you who've never been across the pond, the letter Z in England is pronounced Zed.
Yes, and up in Canada too.
Right?
So I guess that could mean zero. But the thing about this album that made it even more appealing is it's called Visions of Dune. And all of the song titles are referencing characters in the novel Dune.
Wow.
And the guy looks kind of far out. He's playing he's working with some kind of controls there.
Mhm.
Looks like a mixing board. He's a synthesizer player.
Okay.
And it is basically avant synthesizer work of the mid 70s. In fact, it came out in 79. Mixed with like some really kind of aggressive fusion jazz ideas.
Okay.
But not from the same adept place as like major fusion jazz artists. Not that it's inept, but anyway, just it came my way. I'm checking that out, and
Mm-hmm. I love it.
It blew my
I love
mind.
the color. Yeah. The cover there. is
It
amazing.
blew my mind. Okay, this artist from 2011, a friend of mine turned me on to probably a little ways after that, maybe around 2014 or so. Haxon Cloak.
Okay.
And I would assume that to the world at large, he's a very obscure artist. His real name is Bobby Krilic, Scandinavian, I believe. And he actually has done some major stuff, like producing the most recent or the one before it, Bjork's solo albums.
Okay.
And he scored some horror films. So what drew me to him was that it's this kind of modern, avant-garde, experimental, soundscapey thing, but you can tell he has a sense of classical composition, or at least neoclassical and sort of film scoring approach to it, but mixed with kind of pagan, ritualistic sounding stuff in parts. So it was just exactly what I was looking for at that time, and he's produced some other artists' work as well. So he's got several things out under the name Hacks and Cloak. Yeah, so
Check it out.
bring him out of obscurity, maybe. I don't know.
All right, a little bit anyway. Just crack the door open
Yeah.
a bit. Okay, next on my list is the Watts 103rd Street Rhythm Band, featuring Charles Wright,
Yep.
and their record Hot Heat and Groove, which was their debut record.
That's their debut.
Yeah, so this record came out in 1967. It's got a lot of that kind of Summer of Love flavor going along with some deep
Yeah,
funk.
Yep. Yeah.
I've always felt like this band is completely neglected and unknown, and I think that's a crying shame, because they had the goods and they delivered the goods.
Yeah.
They were really a terrific band, soul, funk, and they charted. They had a couple of records that charted, but I think mostly today they're just completely forgotten. If you think of like Tower of Power, or, people that have kind of projected forward into
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's almost in between that James Brown sort of apex in the late '60s into the kind of era of what Chicago and Tower of Power were doing with funky rock music, but this is obviously more directly derived from the soul funk era.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's jazziness in there too. I have one record of his, and I had a couple others that I don't have now, but It's Your Thing.
Yep.
That was probably
Do Your Thing.
Do Your Thing.
Yeah. It's Your Thing. That was the Isley Brothers.
Right. Yeah. Do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Do Your Thing.
Till You Can't Get Enough was another one.
I think that
Love
was,
Land was another one.
That was an early NWA hit song too.
Yeah.
Sampled that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So great band. Check them out. Then another band that I could never. I think they kind of did it to themselves. They were a band that kind of blew up in a number of different times and ways and stuff, and they never really reached into our consciousness, at least not in this country. Maybe they did in Europe, but the band Captain Beyond.
Yeah.
And the record I have is Sufficiently Breathless. It says that they're formed in Los Angeles in 1971. I don't really know. I don't really know. I never knew about them until like 10 years ago. I came across this record.
Yeah, I never learned where they were from.
Yeah, but they had famous people in the band. They had Rod Evans, who was the Deep Purple's first singer. They had Bobby Caldwell, who was Johnny Winter's drummer. Iron Butterfly, Lee Dorman, bassist, was in the band at one point. But just a very, eclectic style that had rock, prog, jazz fusion, and space rock. They did some very spacey records, and just marvelously produced and just imaginatively, rendered, I think.
Their debut record, especially, would continue to be really obscure, but there's kind of a subculture of fans of music that is considered proto-metal.
Okay.
Stuff that was heavy, progressive, that beyond Sabbath and Deep Purple and Rainbow and stuff would, the obscure things that people have hunted for that were kind of roots of metal or leading in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So the debut Captain Beyond record is a classic in that little subculture, and I have that album. The follow-up to that, I guess we didn't feel was hitting as hard as that first one, but still some good stuff on it. By this title, I can't think of which album that is.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, they were amazing.
Well, what do you?
I don't know.
What do you got?
Feeling like I'm not whipping through these fast enough. This artist here, you wouldn't know it just from the face of it, but it's a Bill Nelson record.
Oh.
And for some reason, this one he put out under the name Orchestra Arcana. However, I found that when trying to reference him on Spotify, I had to put in Bill Nelson. I don't know why he went by a moniker for this, but this one came out in '86. Bill Nelson came out of Bebop Deluxe.
Yep.
And in his solo work, I found he is much more similar to someone like Ryuichi Sakamoto, who came out of Yellow Magic Orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like I mentioned before, that David Sylvian, Japan, his group Japan, they all were swirling around in this kind of avant new wave pop stuff. That I say pop, but it's not music that would be popular on the radio. Just art pop, maybe. I kind of like that term.
Sure.
So I've got 5 Bill Nelson records now, and just
One of my favorite guitarists of all
he's
time.
amazing.
Also underrated, also
Yeah.
little known outside of Bebop Deluxe, really.
And just conceptually, just so interesting to me, and I just can't get. This is the first thing I got by him, and I've gotten some more since then. But yeah, he's just blowing my mind, and anything kind of in that realm I've been really digging lately. I need to explore more Bebop Deluxe, but I kind of skimmed through a double LP anthology of theirs, and
Yeah, I have that one.
was digging it, but the solo Bill Nelson stuff was speaking to me more.
I think the Axe Victim record for me really was a slamming
Yeah, I
rock
need to
record.
dig into
and
that
then
one.
they sort of got a little more proggy, I think, a little more art rocky.
Yeah. Okay.
But that record was a straight ahead rock record. The title track is one of the heaviest rock
Okay.
songs
I gotta get that one, man.
ever. Take my word for it.
I certainly will. All right, do one more here.
One more, yeah.
We got Bruce Hack, and
Okay.
I think you're probably somewhat familiar with Bruce Hack. He's definitely not a household name, but
Why should I be familiar with it?
well, I thought you might have come across him. He was kind of an early analog synth experimenter, probably played some Moog and other stuff. He was, however...
I love the title, by the way.
Yeah, it's called the Electric Lucifer, and it came out in 1970. So kind of in that Age of Aquarius era, he's doing this dark psychedelic thing. But he was mostly known for doing music for children.
Really?
And so for him to do this sort of, what's I can't think of the right reference. Your Dante's Inferno kind of a thing in a way, like,
Sure.
you feel kind of like you're going through these stages of hell. Yet there's still some kind of more upbeat bounciness to some of it. But if you're into Moog records, if you're into experimental records from the late 60s and early 70s, I would check that out. It's kind of become iconic from the reissuing of his stuff, along with the rediscovery in the 90s. Because people were looking for a lot of library music that influenced stuff like Stereolab and groups like Broadcast and stuff. So he kind of was brought out to light amongst that little subculture. And anyway, yeah,
Nice.
It's pretty far out obscure record there.
Love it. So my next record is something called Under Buy-In, is the name of the band, and the record is Sami Stoff som Stoff. They're Danish.
I don't even know what you just said.
I don't know what I said either. Hopefully I didn't insult anybody. Under by end translate as in Danish as below the city.
Under by end.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they were really, they're still out there. They're still making records. This came out in 2006. So hey, something in this century, folks.
Yeah.
Mark this down as a red letter day on your calendar. For me, anyway. They had a very unorthodox interpretation of rock. They used a lot of. They didn't play guitar. They Chicks on Speed. It was mostly cello, violin, wooden instruments, some organs, some drums, some percussion, and with a jazzy, folky, sort of classical thing happening, and then a lot of Danish lyrics, which I don't speak Danish, so I have no idea what they're saying. So hopefully they aren't cussing. But it's just a really gorgeous stew of wooden acoustical instruments, kind of in a very rock-ish sort of vein.
Wow.
With a great singer, female singer, over the top of it. It's really.
That sounds lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really good. And then next is a guy that I think probably most of us are familiar with. His name is Neil Young. Made a lot of records. But this one was, I think, qualifies as obscure. It's called "Landing on the Water."
Yeah, he was Canadian, right?
He was Canadian. I think he still is Canadian. Maybe dual citizenship or something. I saw him do on just as a side. I saw him a YouTube video of him and doing "A Day in the Life." The Beatles tune with Crazy Horse. And then of course so Paul pops up to kind of stand around and do some vocals and stuff, but it was a great version.
Interesting.
But this thing is called "Landing on the Water," and it is there's nary an acoustic guitar in sight on this record. It is all Moogs and various synthesizers. And Neil taking a crack at doing, a synthesizer record.
Yeah, which he did with Trans as well.
Right.
Trans was this in the same time frame as that?
I think this was earlier than that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's obscure to me, and I've seen it many times. I love Neil Young. I have many Neil records in my collection, but I've never added this one.
Well, it's got "Hippie Dream," which is a song that he's redone a couple of times. But the lead off single was "Transformer Man," and so it was like a vocoder. Neil Young with a vocoder. And it's been said that this record has a claustrophobic feel. And in fact, in an interview, Neil Young said he took a record company president in Europe in his car, and he put this on and turned it up really loud, and said that was the most claustrophobic record he's ever heard in his life.
Wow.
But yeah, so pretty obscure, even though Neil himself, of course, is not obscure. But I think out of
now I'm trying to recall if I have a copy of this. I think at one point I nabbed a copy and found out that it had a warp in it, and it was pretty unplayable. I feel like I might have replaced it. I need to dig into that because I love Trans, which was a Geffen release he did where he kind of pissed off Geffen by not delivering the patented Neil sound or whatever.
Yeah, it was kind of a F.U. to David Geffen, who no doubt deserved whatever.
I think probably between both of those albums, Neil was I think feeling a lot of, where the world was headed, technology and.
Right. Well, he was fairly tight with Mark Mothersbaugh there for a while.
That's
and,
true.
And did stuff with Devo.
They were part of that film together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Lost Highway. Or what is it called? Human Highway.
Human Highway.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I think that was rubbing off on him at that time.
Yeah, totally. He was feeling Devo.
As are we all.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's an unobscure artist, but possibly one of his most obscure albums.
Yeah.
I guess.
See if you can slip one more in before we take our break.
Okay.
I feel like
I'll try to be quick here. This electronic artist, Kelp.
Kelp.
With an E, Kelpe. EDM, IDM.
Okay.
One of those labels, intelligent dance music, or it's electronic music that is not structured in the four on the floor house music kind of way. So it's more tripped out, more kind of heady. Anyway, just one of my favorite electronic albums of the 2000s that I refer to a lot, and I don't even know what to compare it to.
Well, you can judge for yourself, because we have our Spotify playlist that you can find
That's true.
right down here,
Yeah.
and you can sample these selections and see what you think for yourself. Are they obscure? Maybe they deserve to be obscure. I don't know. Yeah. Who's to judge? Well, believe it or not, we're to our second break. We're going to take a quick one, and we'll be back in just a minute with more Low Pass Filter. Hello, welcome back to Low Pass Filter. Mateo Noche here, Bandon Wayne over there. We're talking obscure records that we like and that we hope you like too. Please like them.
Yeah, we're trying to turn you on here.
Yeah.
This one has to be obscure. This artist has put out some other work. I don't think, as far as what I saw, that they have released that many albums. But this is on a very small independent record label that may be in limbo right now. And the owner of this label happens to live in Arcata, I believe, but originally was from Chicago. Anyway, this artist is Kellen Phil Corin, and I guess he calls the ensemble he's with Legacy.
Okay.
You'll be able to see that picture very well, but he had been part of the Sun Ra Orchestra, I believe.
Okay.
And so Ben, who owns this label, Capture Records, I don't know, connected. I believe this was performed in Chicago, where Ben is from. So yeah, it was performed at the Adler Planetarium.
Looks like they got upright bass, a cello, and a couple of
an upright cello, or somebody's
and a couple of harps.
Yeah. So it is very in the vein of Sun Ra.
Mm-hmm.
However, leans more in the spiritual jazz feeling of some later Pharoah Sanders and Alice Coltrane and that kind of stuff. Yeah, so Ben has put out a lot of experimental rock and kind of underground indie stuff, but he put this out, and I was just checking out some of the records he put out, and when I heard this one, I just was blown away. It's everything you want in that kind of experimental avant/spiritual jazz kind of a record, and every time I listen to it, I just think this is one of the greatest performances, greatest recordings of all time. So
Wow. Okay,
yeah.
That's high praise.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to try and whip through the next two really quickly. I have Fripp and Eno.
Yeah.
Neither one of these guys are particularly obscure, but this record called No Pussyfooting is pretty obscure.
Out of everything on your list, that one jumped out at me as that's a favorite record of mine.
Yeah, it's just got 2 songs on it, Swastika Girls and the Heavenly Music Corporation.
Yeah.
On one, it's a whole side. But this is kind of the beginning of Robert Fripp and his Frippatronics sort of thing, when he went from just being a normal guitar player to somebody who was really trying to take it outside, and with a lot of interesting little boxes connected to his guitar.
Yeah. Fripp probably could never have been a normal guitar player because he's just not a normal guy, I don't think. He seems like kind of a low-key, weird guy.
Yeah.
I don't mean in a bad way. He's a very interesting person.
And of course, he was on the cusp of all these great King Crimson records.
Yeah.
This is the halcyon years of
And
King
so-
Crimson. 1973, this came out.
Yeah, and there's another Fripp and Eno record called Evening Star.
I do not know that one.
Oh, okay. Well, there's those two, and if you love this, you'll love the other one.
Okay.
But they are different. Not exactly walking the same path, but not that far apart either. They're both kind of ambient. Evening Star, I think, is maybe a little bit more avant new agey kind of feeling. But anyway, I was stoked to see that on your list. Something about both of those two, I think Eno maybe more so, is in their ambient work. There's this way that it always feels like it's unfolding, like a perpetually unfolding or blossoming flower.
Yeah.
And each time you listen to it, it probably is a different experience,
And this record came out right before Here Come the Worm Jets,
There
which
you
is
go.
one of my
Yeah.
favorite records of all
Oh.
time. So, next one I have is MX-80,
Yeah.
sometimes known as MX-80 Sound, and their
Exactly.
record Crowd Control.
Yeah. I happen to like those guys a lot too.
Yeah, they made a lot of records. I only have the one. I didn't realize they made so many records, but they made like a dozen records.
Wow. Yeah.
And they were signed to Ralph Records, which I think I knew about them before I knew that they were on Ralph, but because I got this back when it first came out. It's called Crowd Control. I think I mentioned that. So these guys are from Bloomington, Indiana. Been called one of the most out of step yet prescient bands of all time.
Yeah.
Because they presaged a lot of the noise bands like Sonic Youth and Shellac and Codeine and these other
kind
bands.
of post rock.
Yeah.
Before there was.
So it's just like this breakneck metal guitar just slamming with an atonal chord structure going on and cross rhythm percussions and these kind of forlorn vocals.
But it can fit with a early punk vibe.
Yeah,
I
totally.
always felt like their early stuff was could also fit in that New York no wave kind of realm a
Absolutely.
bit. Crowd Control is a great record. I think maybe their first one is self-titled.
Mm-hmm.
I like that one too.
Yeah.
Does Crowd Control have Follow That Car or It's Not My Fault? One of those
Why
tracks?
are we here?
Okay, yeah. And it kind of fits
If
with
we're
that.
just going to disappear.
Yeah, and I'm from Indiana, but the sound almost could have been more Bay Area in that realm of bands like Chrome and
Right. Another great band.
The Residents and all that
Mhm.
Ralph Records stuff. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
that's a cool pick. So just a few left. I'll try to be real fast. My friend Wes turned me onto this artist, Ben Frost, and this was the record that he first played for me. Well, didn't get a chance to play any of their other ones for me, but I found out that Wes had like 6 or 7 other records by this guy in his collection. Kind of like that Hacks and Cloak stuff I was describing earlier, but not so much sounding like it would go along with a film score. It's a little bit more kind of insular experimentalism in sound, but soundscapey and oftentimes a bit scary, kind of spooky, creepy feeling.
Okay.
Which is something I really love in soundscape music.
Sure.
Sounds that feel like could be sounds you would hear while you're kind of freaked out in the dark in your
Right.
house or something. So, been really obsessed with that guy's work lately. I have a bonus record in there, but Boren under Club of Gore, or
Okay.
Boren and
Whoa.
Der Club of Gore, German band that apparently at one time was more like a black metal band or death metal band. I have no awareness of what they were doing before this group, but apparently they morphed into this group at some point in the 2000s and became this jazz noir trio,
Okay.
which I think you would appreciate. Upon first listen to this group, I think people might feel that it's reminiscent of the mood of Twin Peaks.
Okay. The Julie Cruz sort of.
The Angelo Badalamenti
Right.
scoring that went along with Twin Peaks, maybe even more so the follow-up film Fire Walk with Me.
Right.
So when you first hear these guys, you're like, that feels like Twin Peaks, man. But they're definitely in their own sphere doing their own thing. It's very glacially paced. It's very slow paced with just this beautifully recorded piano, upright bass, and God, maybe some saxophone in the distance. It's the most spare, minimal stuff. And they've got a handful of albums. Their first couple are my favorites. That one's called Black Earth from 2004.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I just have one left, I think. Do I have just one? I have one left. That's the band Triumvirate.
Yeah, I never listened to these guys, but
yeah.
I know of them.
And their album Spartacus.
Yeah.
So this was a reimagining of the story of the Roman slave and gladiator from the year 73 BC. These guys, I think, probably if you opened the dictionary and looked them up, they would be right under krautrock. They are. That's what they're kind of their moniker. That's what people tag them with. They were also tagged as Emerson, Lake and Palmer imitators.
Okay.
Same instrumentation. And when they first started out, they actually covered some ELP-esque things like Hoedown, and they were fans of ELP, and but I think they with this record they went on to sort of have their own sound, which is a very dramatic and kind of creepy at times, and just kind of crawls along. Just slathered with synthesizers, and I'm a big fan of synthesizers.
Yeah.
So
Same. I got to dig into that, I think.
they had a kind of a thing going with ELP where they wrote a song called "Lucky Girl," which was kind of their answer to "Lucky Man."
Okay. Yeah.
So they obviously, I think after being tagged as ELP imitators, they kind of wanted to take a swipe at the big guys.
Yeah.
But they probably made half a dozen records.
Okay.
This is the only one I'm really super familiar with. It came out in 1975. And it actually debuted on the charts at number 6. I don't remember which charts. The Billboard charts, let's see, take that back. Number 27, but they tried harder. And sank, I think, from sight almost immediately. Now most people don't know who they are.
I hate to say, no offense to them, but I think the name is a hindrance.
Well, they picked the name because a triumvirate is three people.
Yes.
And so this was a band, a trio. So they.
Yeah. It's just an obscure word to a lot of people.
Sure.
And maybe doesn't roll off the tongue as easy,
Yeah.
And they made it triumvirate, like they had
Yeah.
Didn't they have like a mouse or rat theme?
They did. In fact, this cover, I think, has a mouse inside of a light bulb or something that. A white mouse inside of a light bulb. Which the mouse just probably dead now, so, moment of silence for the mouse.
And the band.
And the band,
who ended up in obscurity.
Ended up in obscurity, as we all do at one point. We're all destined for obscurity, I think.
Yeah.
So you have a bonus.
I had a bonus
pick.
Matt had, in your list that you sent me, you had some honorable mentions.
I ditched them all.
Yeah. I didn't even mean to pick out 11 records. I picked them all out thinking I had landed at 10, but I had 11th in here. So
that's your story, and you're sticking to it.
Well, yeah. I just wanted to plug this record real quick.
Okay.
By this artist named Peck. He
not to be confused with Beck.
No, not at all. And he had been known as Peck the Town Crier. His name is Christopher Peck, and he's actually from Fairfax, California.
Okay.
And he performs...
A homeboy?
Yes, he performs in Fairfax all the time. I met him a couple times, and he performed at my shop a couple times.
Oh, wow.
But this record called Home Phone / Ghost of Payphone.
Okay.
It's not even what he sounds like at this current time. He's always doing kind of different stuff. He's a very talented guitar player.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, this record came out in 2012, and I think it's possibly the best record of 2012.
Really?
Don't care what anybody thinks about any other albums from that year.
Okay.
It's hard to describe, but it's like it's you just have to listen to it. I included a couple songs on the Spotify playlist.
Okay.
But it's a mishmash of a lot of ideas assembled very wonderfully, in my opinion.
Sort of a stew, if you will.
It is, and it's all, for the most part, done by this one guy.
Okay.
I think he may have a little help here and there, but it's mostly all him. He's that kind of a genius. So check out those tracks. That's a plug for my friend Pack there.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I've got one, and I can't even think of the name of the title, but also a local. There's was an artist called Alex.
Okay.
Who, in that sort of sampling realm, did a lot of sampling, but he's also a fabulous guitar player.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find anything on Spotify. I don't even know, what happened to him.
Is he currently playing?
I don't know. This record I got in the late 90s.
Okay.
Somebody handed it to me. So if you're out there, Alex, hit us up. But we do a show here at KCZH called The Repository, which is a very weird show with a lot of strange stuff on it.
Yeah.
Spoken word and electronic and weird stuff that happens at midnight. And here's a shameless plug on Friday and Saturday nights. So it's the kind of thing that if you're driving around in the car and you just happen to land on KCZH 96.7, you will probably do the WTF moment. What exactly are we listening to here?
Heck yeah.
But anyway, we got Alex in that.
That's cool.
In that record. So
nice.
In that show.
Yeah.
So,
that playlist.
So be sure and.
Which is always evolving. You're always.
It is.
Adding
It's
stuff into the mix.
Right. Well, yeah. We're always adding stuff in the mix. I'm always looking for stuff to go into the show. So I've got some local folks that have been giving me stuff, and some people from out of the area.
Cool.
So if you want to hand me something, KZZH at accesshumble.net. If you've got listen to the show. You can find it on Internet Archive if you want to listen back to it and see what it's all about. And if you feel like this is something that would fit into that, be sure and drop it off.
There you go, taking submissions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't mean to go there, but somehow I ended up there.
Might as well.
So, final thoughts on obscure records. Why do so much music is produced? I think it's probably part of it. You can't know everything, right? You can't know about
that. I believe that to be pretty true.
And of course, Taylor Swift is sucking the oxygen out of the entire world. So.
If you could know everything, Mateo and I would.
That's right.
But
trust me,
music,
I don't.
Strictly
you
music,
may, but
well, and I'm speaking strictly of music and
yeah,
things in the giant sphere of music recordings and everything like that. Yeah, I was thinking sometimes we like obscure albums because we discovered them. We know about it. We kind of relish in the idea that it's not a mass phenomenon thing. But I think, it's a beautiful thing when artists are allowed to release albums that don't fit the pre-paved narrative of what will sell records and
yeah.
garner a big audience.
Plus, I really like the feeling that, I'll bet nobody else on the planet is listening to this record at this very moment.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, odds are maybe somebody is somewhere, but yeah, I really dig things that that are out there and people don't know about, and it's just like it feels like it belongs to me on some level, exclusively. I know it doesn't, but but yeah, when you've got something that you love and nobody else knows about, I don't know. It's kind of fun to have a secret.
Oh yeah, and also there's a balance there in exploring stuff that is always going to be a more niche appeal to the stuff that you love that you love along with everybody else because it's so classic and is popular for a reason. So there's so many.
Not only
facets.
that, there's that pure snobbery aspect. Nanny, I know about it. You don't.
You are one of the snobbiest people I know.
I am.
I just can't get over
I know.
It,
I can't help myself. Well, I think that's just going to about do it. That's all the time we have for this week. That flew by.
It flew by. We hit the mark. We squeezed them all in.
We did
somehow.
I'm not sure how it happened, but be sure and check out our Spotify playlist. You can find in the doodly-doo down here below for you people that are watching or us on YouTube.
Yeah.
If you're on TV or radio, you're kind of out of luck there. You can go, but you can go to Access Humble's YouTube page or the Low Pass Filter YouTube page. Or you can go to Internet Archive. It eventually ends up on Internet Archive. If you search on Low Pass Filter, you should come up with it, and maybe a bunch of things about actual low pass filters, about how to construct them, how to solder them, how to solder one in your mixing board. But Ben, thanks for being here as always.
You, man.
Always a ton of fun, and we'll see you next time on the next Low Pass Filter. Thanks for watching Low Pass Filter. You can contact the hosts at lowpassfilter2020@gmail.com. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to be notified about future shows.